Dad, don't bother coming to the wedding. Madison says your presence would ruin everything. Tuesday, July 9th, 11:20 a.m. I read it twice in the lobby of Fifth Street Credit Union, a numbered ticket sweating in my palm. I'm Walter Pierce, 76, retired lineman, 40 years in bucket trucks, sleet in January, thunder in July. Hands nicked, hearing half gone, bills always paid. I was here to send the last $22,000 I'd saved for Ethan and Madison's Maui honeymoon. A gift so my boy could start better than I did. The phone pulsed again. "Please don't make this harder," Ethan wrote. "It's for the vibe." I stared past the teller windows at a rusted flagpole and felt the wire instructions folded in my pocket. Routing number, hotel account, due today. Also in that fold were the things I'd skipped. New glasses, a winter coat, cash jobs swapping ceiling fans in cul-de-sacs off the interstate. "Next," the teller called. I didn't move. June would have seen through this from the laundry room. "Love your kid, Walt, but don't finance disrespect." I opened the banking app, pulled up the template, and pressed cancel. The screen blinked like it doubted me. I blocked Ethan's number. My fingers shook. My choice didn't. Outside, the Ohio heat pressed down, July heavy and old. I crossed to the diner next door, Formica counters, coffee that tastes like the morning paper, and sat 2 stools from the pie case. "Black coffee," I said, "and a cinnamon roll if it's fresh." The waitress poured without asking my name. I've been a sometimes regular here since they switched from ashtrays to potted succulents and called it updating the brand. My hands stopped trembling around the mug. The text kept replaying, but quieter. "Don't bother coming. Ruin everything." I tried to find the version of Ethan who skinned his knee on our driveway and sobbed into my shirt, the one I talked to throw a baseball under the wash of a streetlight I'd installed myself. Madison. Well, from the first dinner she'd measured me, eyes scanning my work jacket and the scuffs on my boots. She likes words like curated and vision. I prefer works and broken. The bell over the door jangled. Somebody laughed at the counter TV, some segment about HOA fireworks rules down in Centerville. Rules. That's America, isn't it? Rules and paper. I wiped my mouth and left cash under the mug. Back home on my porch, a small, stubborn square of shade on a street where folks still wave at the mail carrier, I took the folding chair June refused to throw out and sat with the quiet. Across the street, a kid tried to land a skateboard trick, failed, tried again. The maples hissed in the heat. I took out my file box. Old habit, banker's boxes labeled with blue painter's tape, everything in plastic sleeves. Title to the house, paid off the year before June's last Christmas. Utilities on autopay. A copy of my will from a clinic downtown that only charged me $20 because I brought donuts for the staff. I'd always kept my papers in order because electricity taught me this. Current follows the path you give it. So does trouble. The screen lit up with an unknown number. I let it ring. It stopped. Started again. I set the phone face down. In the kitchen, I ate a microwaved meatloaf dinner because I didn't feel like cooking. I sat at the table with my forearms on the wood and listened to the house breathe. After June died, I learned that a house tells you everything if you let it. A sticky hinge, a slow drain, a furnace changed by the smell of the air. Today it told me I was alone, and that I wasn't helpless. I unblocked Ethan long enough to type one sentence. "I won't be wiring money." I deleted 3 different lines after that. Lectures, apologies, memories, and settled on a second sentence. "I love you." Then I hit send and blocked him again before I could see the dots appear. I slept badly, and when I did sleep, I dreamed of a reception hall lit like an airport. Madison arranging flowers so no petal was out of place. Ethan moving chairs while pretending not to see me at the door. In the morning, I shaved, put on my best navy shirt, the one with buttons that still shine, and drove to a law office over by the county building. The sign said, Elder Law and Estates. Inside, diplomas and a photo of the attorney, Caroline Nash, handing a check to a veterans center. The receptionist looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, ma'am," I said, "but I've got a situation that smells like paperwork." She smiled, not unkind. "Have a seat." When Ms. Nash brought me back, she listened without interrupting. I told her about the text, the wire, the saving, the years, the way the word vibe can gut a man who's paid every bill he ever owed. She took notes, slow and neat. When I finished, she slid a legal pad toward me. "Mr. Pierce," she said, "we'll lock your accounts so nobody can help you manage your money. We'll add a medical capacity letter to your file. We'll put your house in a simple trust with you as trustee so it's crystal clear you control it. We'll set up alerts, and if anyone tries anything, we'll have a paper trail big enough to park a truck on." I felt something unclench behind my ribs. "And if my son gets salty?" I asked. She met my eyes. "Then he learns what every adult learns. Boundaries are part of love." On my way out, the receptionist handed me a folder. "Welcome packet," she said. I tucked it under my arm like a new tool. Back on the porch that evening, thunder rolled somewhere west toward Indiana. I watched the clouds muscle up over the neighborhood. I thought I'd hit the worst of it at the bank, but storms, in my experience, like to reload. The mail carrier slipped a bundle through the slot. Among the grocery flyers and a church picnic postcard sat a plain white envelope with a county return address. I turned it over once in my hands, then twice. Paper and rules. I cracked the seal. The county envelope wasn't a summons. Not yet. It was a bland little notice about jury duty eligibility, printed crooked. I almost laughed. The state of Ohio wanted me present while my own son didn't. I set it aside, poured coffee, and told myself I had the night off from thinking. The next morning, as the sun pushed through the blinds, my phone lit with a local number I didn't recognize. Habit made me answer. "Mr. Pierce?" A bright, clipped voice. "This is Madison." I leaned against the sink. "Morning." "We need the wire," she said, skipping hello. "The resort holds our suite until 5. Ethan's been stressed enough with the seating chart and the rehearsal walkthrough. We can't add panic to the vibe." There was that word again. "There won't be a wire." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry?" I canceled it. "I won't be at the wedding either. Per your text." "That text was Ethan's," she said lightly, as if the distinction mattered. Emotions were high. "You of all people should want his marriage to start smoothly. You told him you wanted to help." "I do want it to start smoothly," I said. "Smoothly is different from financing, and I don't fund disrespect." Her laugh was small and mean. "You're making this about you. It's a honeymoon, Walter, not a mortgage." "You don't talk to me like I'm a bill you're haggling," I said, keeping my voice even. "Tell my son I love him. Tell him I won't be moving money." She inhaled through her nose, sharp, annoyed. "If you ruin this, you'll regret it." Then the line went dead. I stood at the sink until the coffee went cold. 40 years around live power will teach you to keep your hands steady when someone else shakes. I washed the mug, set it upside down on the towel, and drove to the credit union. "Mr. Pierce," said the branch manager, a kid with a wedding band and a haircut that said he didn't have time for bad hair days. "What can we do for you?" "We can make it so nobody but me moves a dime." He nodded like he'd heard it before. Together we added verbal passwords that weren't a pet's name or a birthday. We set up alerts, any transfer attempts, any new payees. I signed a form to require in-person verification for wires. "It'll slow you down too," he warned. "I like slow," I said. "Slow is safe." On my way out, I stopped by a notary desk near the teller line and had my signature authenticated on a simple letter. I, Walter Pierce, manage my own affairs. It wasn't magic. It was a breadcrumb for whatever wolf showed up next. Back home, I propped open the screen door and fixed the loose hinge that had been complaining for a month. Tool bag, driver bit, 3-inch screws, the kind of work that answers its own questions. When I finished, the door swung clean and quiet. I clicked it 3 times for the satisfaction. My neighbor, Rita Daniels, shuffled by with her rescue beagle and waved. "You coming to the church picnic Sunday?" she called. "They're letting folks bring coolers this year, pending, parks and rec rules." "We'll see," I said. "I might be tied up." She tipped her visor back. "Heard Ethan's big day is Saturday." You must be proud I opened my mouth and closed it again. "I'll tell you after the weekend." By late afternoon, the heat broke. A thunderhead muscled over the neighborhood, and the light went the color of old brass. I was sorting screws back into their little bins in the basement when the doorbell buzzed twice, quick and impatient. I wiped my hands and climbed the stairs. Through the peephole, I saw Ethan on my stoop, in a fitted button-down, jaw set hard like he was pretending it wasn't. He looked older than the last time I'd studied him. Office stress around the eyes, gym muscles in the shoulders. He held his phone like a courtroom exhibit. I cracked the door but left the chain on. "Hey, son, we have to talk," he said, eyes flicking past me into the house. "Open the door. We can talk right here." He huffed a laugh that wasn't a laugh. "Madison says you hung up on her." I said what I had to say. "You can't do this, Dad." He jammed his hands into his pockets, then yanked them out like the pockets offended him. "The room block expires. The photographer needs the deposit. I told people." He stopped, swallowed. "I told people you were taking care of things." "That was your first mistake," I said. "Don't tell people I'm doing something unless you know I am." He flinched like I'd swung at him. "You know what? You've always had this martyr thing. I worked hard. Nobody helped me. I know best. It's control, Dad. It's always been control." I felt June's voice in my ear. "Keep your tone low, Walt. Don't let the wind blow you." "No," I said. "It's boundaries. They're different." His phone buzzed. He glanced down, then up. "If you don't wire it, we'll have to put it on a card." "That's not the point. The point is showing up for your family." "You told me not to show up," I said. "That was—" He gestured, searching for a word that would both absolve him and scold me. "Heat of the moment. You're making it worse." "I'm making it honest." The storm cracked open over the street, fat drops hitting the porch roof like thrown pebbles. Ethan stepped back from the splash, and anger slid over his face like a clean mask. He dropped his voice. "If you won't help, I'll do what I have to." He looked at the house number, the porch rail. "Me. You've been forgetting things. You left the hose running last month. You sent the electric bill twice. I turned the hose off 5 minutes later," I said. "And I called the utility, and they refunded the double pay. You know how I know? Because I keep a ledger that would make your accountant weep." He shook his head. "You're not listening. If you won't do this the easy way, Madison says there are other ways. Papers, protective orders. We can talk to somebody about your capacity." "And there it is," I said softly. "What? The word you came to say?" He didn't answer. The rain hammered harder. Across the street, the skateboard kid sprinted for his porch, clutching the board like a shield. "I saw a lawyer," I said. "House is in trust. Accounts are locked. My doctor signed a capacity letter yesterday afternoon. You're not the first person to think of using paper to move a man." Color rose in his cheeks. "You're seriously going to war with your only kid over a honeymoon?" "I'm seriously going to protect myself from anybody who thinks love is measured in wire transfers." He stared at me a long moment, eyes going shiny with something he didn't want me to see. Then he nodded once, mouth a hard line. "Okay," he said. "Okay." He turned and stepped off the porch into the downpour without his umbrella. He didn't look back. I watched him cross the walk to the car he couldn't afford until Madison rebranded it as an investment in optics. I closed the door, slid the deadbolt, and stood in the quiet with the storm rattling the gutters. I thought a father's sternness would feel like triumph. It didn't. It felt like grief in a chair at my kitchen table, staring at a cooling cup of coffee and counting the seconds between thunder and lightning. The house settled. The fridge motor clicked on. I had almost convinced myself he'd blow off steam and let it go, watch his own life like the rest of us have to, when, an hour later, a knock came again. Not Ethan's quick, angry buzz. 3 measured raps. Official. I lifted the peephole cover and saw 2 men in sport coats and lanyards, and a woman with a clipboard under a plastic sleeve. When I opened the door, she lifted her badge to eye level. "Mr. Pierce? We're from Adult Protective Services and the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office. We've received a report and need to ask you a few questions." The woman with the clipboard smiled like she practiced in a training video. "I'm Ms. Talbot with Adult Protective Services. This is Investigator Green from the Prosecutor's Office and Mr. Ortiz, our case aide. We received a report that you might be vulnerable to exploitation." Did the report have a return address? I asked, stepping back but leaving the screen door between us. Anonymous, she said. That's how these usually come in. The storm had softened to a steady curtain. Their shoulders glittered with rain. I unlatched the screen and held it open with my hip. All right, I said. If you're coming in, take a good look. That's the point, isn't it? Green, gray suit, soft shoes, nodded, pen poised. We'll be as quick as we can, sir. We did the tour like a home inspector with better manners. Living room, vacuum tracks still fresh from the morning. Family photos on the bookcase, June in a red blouse, Ethan with front teeth missing and a Little League cap crooked on his head. Kitchen, counters wiped, dishes drying, a calendar with the trash schedule circled and my doctor appointment penciled in. I opened the fridge, labeled leftovers, milk dated this week, a container of cut melon I'd actually eat. The pantry wasn't glamorous, but the boxes weren't empty. Medication? Miss Talbot asked. I took down a shoebox from the top of the fridge and set it on the table. 3 orange bottles, blood pressure, a statin, a vitamin D supplement. Pill sorters in the drawer, I said, and slid it open to show the week laid out. Tuesday morning already gone. I keep a list in the lid, dosage and doctor. You want my PCP's number? It's on the magnet. She read the label on the statin, then the list, then glanced at Green. He wrote something on his pad that looked a lot like organized. Finances? Green asked, carefully casual. I handed him a clear sleeve from the file box on the counter. The new trust, the capacity letter from my physician, the account alerts printout from the credit union. He thumbed through each page like a man trying not to be impressed. You did this recently, he said, noting yesterday's date. I'm old, not asleep, I said. A scratch at the back door made the beagle across the street bark. Miss Talbot glanced through the window, then at me. Any concerns about food, utilities, social isolation? I play cribbage at the VFW on Thursdays, I said. Rita from next door checks on me enough to be annoying, and I've never missed an electric bill in my life. Feels personal, as careers go. As if conjured, the doorbell rang again. 2 quick tones, Rita's habit. I opened the door to her visor and her dog's damp nose. Everything okay, Walt? She said, clocking the badges and the clipboard in a heartbeat. I saw county plates. Just folks doing their job, I said. The beagle pressed its head against my shin. Rita scratched its ear while looking Miss Talbot dead on. Mr. Pierce mows straight lines and cooks better than me, she said. He carried a crock pot to the church picnic last month and chewed me out for not bringing a serving spoon. He's fine. Green's mouth twitched. Thank you, ma'am. They wrapped up on the porch as the rain tapered into fat drops. Miss Talbot slid a card across my palm. We'll close this unless something changes, she said. I'm sorry for the intrusion. Not your fault, I said, but maybe whoever's making anonymous calls could try names next time. She hesitated, then chose the line, a PS people choose when they can't say what they know. Families struggle around weddings, she said gently. Emotions get inventive. After they left, the house felt even quieter for having been witnessed. I made a sandwich, turkey, mustard, dill pickle, and forgave myself for taking the last slice of American cheese. The beagle barked once more, then settled. The storm marched east toward Columbus. At 3:15, my cell rang with a number that flashed, Credit Union, Fraud Department. I answered on the second buzz. Mr. Pierce? A woman said, professional and brisk. This is Angela with Fifth Street Credit Union. We're calling to verify an online application for a personal line of credit in the amount of $35,000. It lists you as the applicant and includes your home as collateral. I sat so fast my chair scuffed the floor. No, ma'am, I said. I didn't apply for anything. She inhaled through her teeth, the sound of a leak you've just found. All right. We caught it at underwriting because of the flags on your account. Someone used your social security number and address. The employer field says retired, consulting, and the digital signature is off. Off how? Like someone practicing your name with their elbows, she said. Then softer. There's a secondary contact number on the file. The name attached is Ethan Pierce. For a heartbeat, I couldn't find my voice. When it came, it was calm from the outside and burning underneath. What can we do? We're denying the application, she said. We can file an internal fraud report and recommend you place a freeze with the credit bureaus. We'll also mark this as suspected familial fraud, which changes how we handle any future attempts. Do it, I said. All of it. She gave me the numbers for the bureaus and the Federal Trade Commission website where you can swear out an identity theft affidavit, then said lower, I'm sorry. This happens more than you'd think. I thanked her, wrote everything down in my ledger, and hung up. Then I sat with my hands spread on the table, like I was bracing a ladder in a wind. The room seemed to tilt a degree to the left and right and back again. June's voice came, steady as ever. Paper trails, Walt. You train for this. You follow the current to the panel and you trip the breaker. I called Miss Nash. She picked up on the second ring. Talk to me. I told her about APS, about the credit line, about Ethan's name as secondary contact. She didn't gasp or cluck. She made a sound like a pen uncapping. We'll file police and FTC reports today, she said. I'll draft a cease and desist to anyone who touches your credit. And I want you to come in tomorrow morning to sign an affidavit. Bring your folder. What about Ethan? I asked, the question dry and bitter on my tongue. We don't accuse, she said. We document. If law enforcement wants to talk to him, they'll talk to him. Your job is to protect yourself and stay civil. Civil, I repeated, as if it were a new word I'd never tried on. After we hung up, I walked out to the porch. The light had gone clear and clean, the street washed. Across the way, the skateboard kid nailed his trick and whooped to no one. I almost clapped. Instead, I took the blue painter's tape from my toolbox and labeled a new sleeve. IDTHEFT 7/. The date looked wrong until I remembered which month we were in. I wrote it again, slow and neat. I was sliding the sleeve into the box when the mail slot clacked. Another plain envelope, this one heavier, the seal pressed firm like a thumbprint. Return address, Montgomery County Probate Court. I stood very still, the envelope cool against my palm, and felt the hair on my arms lift like I'd stepped too close to a live transformer. Emergency guardianship petition, ex parte, the window read in tiny type. I broke the seal. The probate court envelope weighed heavier than its ounces. I slid it open with the same pocket knife I'd used to strip cable for decades. Inside was a petition. Emergency guardianship, ex parte, filed by none other than Ethan Pierce, my only son. The language was cold, precise. Respondent exhibits diminished capacity in financial decision-making, risks dissipation of assets. Immediate protective intervention recommended. It might as well have been written in neon. Dad can't be trusted with his own life. I sat at the kitchen table, the envelope flat in front of me. My hands didn't shake, not after 40 years on live lines, but a different current moved through me, low, steady, dangerous. I called Caroline Nash. It came, I said, probate petition. She exhaled like she'd been waiting. Do not panic. Bring it here first thing in the morning. We'll file a response with your medical letter and trust paperwork. Emergency orders are temporary unless the court buys the story. They won't. Ethan swore it, I said. He swore I wasn't right in the head. That's his perjury problem, not yours, she said crisply. Our job is to shine light on the lie. That night I couldn't bring myself to cook. I sat on the porch with a ham sandwich and listened to the locusts whir. Rita's porch light clicked on across the street. She waved, saw the envelope beside me, and tilted her head. I lifted it, mouthed, later, and she nodded. Sleep was a losing battle. At 2 a.m. I brewed weak coffee and spread out my folder on the kitchen table. Bank alerts, the trust, the notary letter, the physician's signed capacity statement, every page in a sleeve. I checked the tabs 3 times. My folder was more than plastic, it was armor. By the time morning light hit the blinds, I was dressed in my navy shirt, pressed khakis, and the shoes I polish once a year. Not vanity, dignity. I drove downtown, parked 2 blocks from the courthouse, and walked with my folder under my arm like it was the Declaration of Independence. Caroline met me in her office conference room, her own stack of papers ready. "We'll respond before noon," she said. "I want you to keep calm when we're in front of the judge. No raised voice, no muttering under your breath. Just answer direct." "I can do that," I said. She tapped the petition. "They're claiming confusion. You'll prove clarity. Nothing fancier than that." At 10 sharp, we walked into Montgomery County Probate Court, courtroom 4B, air conditioning blowing like January. The judge was younger than I expected. 40-ish, sharp haircut, black robe draped like armor. Ethan and Madison sat at the other table, both in tailored clothes that didn't belong to their income bracket. Madison's smile was pure strategy. Ethan's eyes slid away from mine. The clerk read the case name. Hearing those words, "in the matter of Walter Pierce," made me want to stand and object just on grammar. I wasn't a matter. I was a man. Ethan's lawyer spoke first, a smooth fellow in a Navy suit. "Your Honor, the respondent has demonstrated repeated lapses. Forgetting to shut off utilities, double paying bills, and erratic financial promises, including a canceled wire transfer for a contracted honeymoon trip. My client, his son, only wishes to safeguard his father's well-being." It was theater. Every syllable meant to turn my life into a bullet point list. Caroline stood when it was our turn. She didn't posture. She held up my folder. "Your Honor, here are 3 documents dated within the last 2 weeks. A notarized statement of intent, a letter from Dr. Marcus Talley, board certified, attesting to Mr. Pierce's full cognitive capacity, and evidence of financial safeguards voluntarily established at Fifth Street Credit Union. We also have testimony from Adult Protective Services that an anonymous tip of exploitation was unfounded after home inspection." The judge took the folder, leafed through, silent except for paper's soft rasp. "Mr. Pierce," he said finally, looking at me, "do you understand why you're here?" I stood. "Yes, Your Honor. My son and his fiancée want me declared incompetent so they can manage my money. I'm not incompetent. I worked as a lineman 40 years, paid every bill on time, buried my wife with dignity. I cook my meals, mow my lawn, keep my ledgers. I came here in the shirt my wife liked because I still care how I present. I don't need a guardian. I need my son to remember I raised him." The courtroom went so quiet you could hear the air vent. Ethan stared at the table. Madison looked straight at me, lips pressed in that thin smile. The judge cleared his throat. "I've reviewed the petition and the rebuttal. At this stage, the court finds insufficient grounds to appoint an emergency guardian. Petition denied." The gavel tap was small but final. I sat, not triumphant, but breathing deeper than I had in weeks. Caroline leaned close. "This was only round 1, she whispered. "They won't stop." Across the room, Madison touched Ethan's wrist. He didn't look up. For the first time, I thought I saw shame flicker across his face. It didn't last. Back outside, the sun struck hot on the courthouse steps. Caroline handed me back my folder. "Keep this close," she said. "They'll try something else. They always do." I nodded. I'd seen storms roll in across Ohio fields, lightning forking, wind bending trees. You can't stop a storm, but you can ground your wires, brace your poles, and ride it out standing. That evening, I sat on my porch with the file box at my feet and June's picture in my hand. For the first time in years, I let the neighbors see me cry. Not because I'd lost, but because I'd won, and it was my own son I'd stood against. And as the streetlights flickered on, I knew Madison and Ethan weren't finished. The storm had only just begun. The calm after court lasted less than a week. In my experience, storms don't blow themselves out. They just circle and wait for another crack in the roof. It started on a Tuesday morning. I was fixing the sagging gate on my backyard fence, sweat dripping down my back, when Rita appeared with her beagle tugging hard at the leash. She looked uneasy. "Walt," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "I don't like to be the messenger, but folks are talking. Down at the church ladies' circle yesterday, Madison told a few people you've been leaving your stove on, that you burned a pan last week." I set down the screwdriver, wiped my forehead. I haven't burned a pan since 1989, when June tried to teach me lasagna. Rita gave a weak smile. I told them you were fine, but gossip spreads like mold. That evening at the diner, I noticed it myself. Usually I sit at the counter, and the guys from the VFW nod, maybe ask about the Reds. This time they nodded stiffly, glances sliding away. The waitress refilled my coffee without her usual, sweet or regular. The kind of silence that says people are rehearsing a rumor in their heads. When I got home, the phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. "Mr. Pierce," said the voice. "Male, maybe 30. This is Daniel from Riverside Bank. We're following up on your recent auto loan application for a 2023 Camry." I blinked. "I haven't applied for anything." "Oh." A pause, papers rustling. "The file has your social security number and home address. Signature looks off. Do you have a son named Ethan Pierce?" My pulse thudded. "Yes, why?" "He's listed as your cosigner and primary contact." I gripped the phone tighter. "Cancel that application immediately. We already flagged it. But sir, you may want to file a police report. This isn't small-time fraud." After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the grain in the wood. 2 attempts in 1 week. First the credit union line of credit, now a fake auto loan. They weren't just grasping, they were reckless. The next morning I walked into Caroline Nash's office with the denial letter from Riverside Bank. She read it, jaw tight. "This is escalating. We'll add identity theft to the fraud report. And Walter," she leaned forward, "you need to prepare yourself. If they're willing to fake signatures, they'll try bigger. Property deeds, liens, maybe even your house title." I nodded. "So we stay ahead." "Exactly." That night as I was locking up, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, there were 2 men in press suits, clipboards under their arms. "Good evening," one said, flipping a badge. "Mr. Pierce? We're with Montgomery County Probate Court Service. You've been served." He handed me a thick envelope. I signed the acknowledgement, thanked them for being professional, and closed the door. At the kitchen table, I opened it carefully. Inside was a motion for temporary injunction, re property. In plain English, Ethan and Madison were asking the court to restrain me from moving assets and to give them temporary control, citing erratic and reckless behavior on my part. There were affidavits attached. One claimed I wandered aimlessly in the neighborhood. Another said I'd shouted at children in the park. A third, sworn, said I was behind on utilities and in danger of losing my house. All lies. I stacked the papers neatly, slid them into a fresh sleeve, and labeled it in block letters, "Injunction, false claims." Then I poured myself a strong black coffee, sat on the porch, and looked up at the stars. Somewhere inside, grief gave way to steel. I whispered into the night, "June, I'm not rolling over. Not now, not ever." The crickets sang back like witnesses, and in that moment I knew the next battle wouldn't just be about money. It would be about my name, my place in this community, everything I'd spent 76 years building. The courthouse smell hit me the minute I walked in. Stale air conditioning, old wood polish, and a faint tang of printer ink. I carried my file box like a shield. Caroline met me at security, legal pad tucked under her arm. "They're accusing you of reckless behavior," she said without preamble. "We'll show the opposite. Calm answers, Walter. Straightforward. Let the paper do the talking." "I've been letting paper do the talking my whole life," I muttered. "Bills, pay stubs, overtime slips." Inside the hearing room, Ethan and Madison were already seated. He wore a gray suit I knew he couldn't afford. She wore black and pearls, like she was auditioning for a part. Ethan avoided my eyes. Madison didn't. Her smile was just wide enough to sting. The judge, an older woman with steel-colored hair, called us to order. "This is a preliminary review of the motion for temporary injunction regarding Mr. Walter Pierce's property." Ethan's lawyer rose first. "Your Honor, our client is deeply concerned. Mr. Pierce has demonstrated confusion, hostility, and dangerous neglect of his property. These affidavits," he tapped a folder, "show a man who is no longer capable of responsible stewardship." He read them out. "Wandering the neighborhood, shouting at children, missing bill payments. My chest tightened at the lies, but I kept my jaw set. Caroline stood, calm. Your Honor, these affidavits are unsigned photocopies. We move to strike them. The judge leaned down. Noted. She looked at Ethan's lawyer. Do you have originals? He shuffled, cleared his throat. We'll supplement the record, Your Honor. See that you do, she said, unimpressed. Caroline handed up my evidence. Bank statements, all current. Utility bills, each paid on time. A letter from Adult Protective Services confirming no concerns. And sworn capacity certification from Dr. Marcus Talley. Every document is authenticated. The judge flipped through the stack, nodding. Mr. Pierce, would you like to make a statement? I rose, folder tight in my hands. Your Honor, I'm 76, but I'm not lost. I mow my own lawn, cook my meals, and keep my books balanced. I've worked 40 years climbing poles and never left a man in the dark. Now my son, my only son, wants the court to believe I'm reckless because I wouldn't pay for his honeymoon. That's not confusion. That's boundaries. Silence stretched. I could feel Madison's eyes on me, sharp as tacks. The judge adjusted her glasses. The court finds insufficient evidence to grant a temporary injunction. Motion denied. However, we will set a status conference in 30 days to revisit should credible evidence emerge. The gavel cracked. I exhaled, slow. Caroline squeezed my arm. Round 2, we held. But don't get comfortable. As we left, Ethan finally looked at me. His expression wasn't shame. It was fury, raw and unhidden. Madison whispered something in his ear. He nodded once, jaw tight. Outside, the sun was brutal on the courthouse steps. Caroline shaded her eyes. They'll pivot, she said. If court doesn't work, they'll try the court of opinion. Rumors, neighbors, reputation. She was right. That evening, I stopped at the diner. The waitress slid me my usual coffee, but her smile faltered. Heard you had a rough day in court, she said softly. I frowned. Word travels fast. She leaned closer. Somebody's been telling folks you're unstable, that you can't handle money anymore. I stirred sugar into the cup, watching the swirl disappear. Somebody, I said. When I walked out, 2 neighbors across the street turned away mid-conversation. A cold knot settled in my gut. Back home, I sat on the porch with my ledger open, writing the day's date, the judge's ruling, every detail. Paper never lies. But paper couldn't stop the whispers already in the air. The war had left the courtroom and stepped into my neighborhood. The first real blow from the rumor mill landed on a Saturday. I just finished mowing the yard, sweat soaking through my ball cap, when my neighbor, Jim Hollis, retired firefighter, blunt as a hammer, walked over. He leaned on the fence. Walt, he said carefully, you doing all right? I'm upright, bills paid, fridge stocked. Why? He rubbed the back of his neck. Because folks at the VFW were saying you're slipping, that you gave money to some scammer, that Ethan's just trying to protect you. My throat went dry. And you believe that? He held up his hands. Not saying I did. Just watch your back, words spreading. That night I walked into the diner and felt it again. Conversations quieting when I passed. Heads angled together like magnets repelling me. Madison's work, no doubt. Poisoning the well where I drunk coffee for 20 years. I decided silence wasn't enough anymore. The next morning I set up my phone on the porch railing, hit record, and spoke straight into the lens. My name is Walter Pierce. I'm 76 years old. I worked 40 years as a lineman in Montgomery County. I pay my bills. I cook my meals. I keep my mind sharp and my ledgers sharper. There are rumors going around that I'm losing it. They're false. And if you know me, you know better. I sent the video to Rita, to Jim, to the cribbage group, to every contact still in my phone. Within an hour, I got replies, thumbs up emojis. We believe you, Walt. Even a message from an old coworker in Florida. The support steadied me, but it didn't stop the attack. On Monday, 2 men in sport coats knocked at my door. They introduced themselves as investigators from a regional bank. One flipped open a folder. Mr. Pierce, We're here regarding a $50,000 home equity line of credit filed under your name. My stomach clenched. Not mine. Signature doesn't match either, he admitted, but your son Ethan is listed as a co-applicant. I shut my eyes, breathed once, twice. Gentlemen, you're being used in a fraud. I'll show you my documents. I laid everything on the table. Trust paperwork, capacity letter, my own ID. They nodded grimly, snapped photos, and promised to escalate it to their fraud unit. The minute they left, I grabbed my folder and drove to Caroline's office. She listened, jaw tight. It's escalation, she said. They're moving from reputation to property theft. We'll file a criminal complaint this time. Forgery, fraud, attempted theft. I signed the affidavit she drafted, my name firm on the page. That night, sleep came in snatches. Every creak of the house sounded like someone trying the locks. At 3 a.m., I gave up and sat on the porch with a blanket, June's picture in my lap. They're trying to bury me with lies, I whispered, but I won't fold. Not now. By morning, I was tired but clear. I made oatmeal, wrote everything in my ledger, and checked the porch for mail. Another envelope waited, heavy, sealed with the probate court stamp. Inside, in stark black print, notice of hearing, injunctive relief, fraudulent lien/title. Ethan had escalated again. This time, they weren't just coming for my money. They were coming to take the roof off my head, in front of a judge, with the whole town watching. The summons sat on my kitchen table under the morning sun like a loaded trap. Hearing, injunctive relief, fraudulent lien/title, Montgomery County Probate Court. Date, 1 week away. I called Caroline before I even finished my coffee. They're going for the house outright, I said. I figured as much, she replied. This is the endgame of deed fraud. They want a judge to rubber stamp it before we finish our counter filings. But we've got everything we need. Original deed, mortgage satisfaction, tax receipts, our fraud affidavit already on file with the county recorder. We'll bury this. Her calm steadied me. What do I do until then? Keep your head down. Keep your documents close. And Walter, this hearing will be public. Madison will play to the crowd. Don't let her bait you. That week, I lived like a man preparing for battle. I made extra copies of every paper, gave one set to Caroline, another to Jim for safekeeping. Rita practiced her testimony with me at the kitchen table. Just speak plain, I told her. Tell them what you've seen. No dramatics. She patted my hand. Plain's my specialty. On Wednesday evening, I took a walk around the block. A couple of neighbors waved but didn't come closer. The Facebook rumors had calcified into something heavier, a sense that I was a problem. Madison's poison was working better than any legal motion. Back home, I laid out my court kit on the dining table. Navy shirt, pressed khakis, polished shoes, folder of originals. It felt like packing armor before a siege. The morning of the hearing dawned gray and wet. Caroline met me on the courthouse steps, umbrella over her shoulder, briefcase clutched like a weapon. Deep breaths, she said. They'll open with a sob story about saving you from yourself. Let them. We'll close with facts. Inside the courtroom, the air hummed with quiet spectators, neighbors, church friends, even a reporter from the local paper. Ethan sat at the petitioner's table in a dark suit. Madison wore a cream blouse and an expression of saintly concern. The judge, a tall woman with iron gray hair, called the case. Hearing on petition for injunctive relief regarding alleged fraudulent lien and title issues. Walter Pierce. Ethan's attorney rose. Your Honor, our client seeks to protect his father's home from financial ruin. Mr. Pierce has repeatedly failed to manage his affairs. He is in default on a loan and at risk of losing the property to creditors. We request immediate injunctive relief transferring control to Ethan Pierce to prevent irreparable harm. Madison dabbed at her eye with a tissue on cue. Caroline stood. Your Honor, the respondents categorically deny these claims. Mr. Pierce has no outstanding mortgage. He has been the sole owner of 1224 Willow Avenue for 20 years. Any alleged default is the result of a fraudulent lien currently under investigation. She held up a thick packet. Here are the original deed, mortgage satisfaction statement, tax receipts, and our filed affidavit of fraudulent filing with the Montgomery County Recorder. The judge took the documents, leafed through them. These appear authentic. Caroline continued, voice calm but sharp. Furthermore, the petitioner's attempt to secure control is not based on protecting an asset but on acquiring it. We have supporting statements from neighbors and county officials attesting to Mr. Pierce's competence and the falsity of the alleged debt. She called Rita first. Rita stepped to the stand, purse clutched in both hands. I've cleaned Mr. Pierce's house every week for years. It's spotless. Bills paid on time. He's sharp as a tack. The only thing wrong here is his son trying to take what's his. Then Jim. Walter kept the firehouse books straighter than anyone. He's more organized at 76 than I am at 55. Caroline finished with a notarized letter from the county recorder's office, confirming receipt of our fraud complaint and noting probable deed fraud. The judge set down the papers and looked at me. Mr. Pierce, do you understand the nature of this proceeding? I stood, folder still in my hands. Yes, Your Honor. My son and his wife filed a fake lien, then used it to say I can't manage my house. But I've got the proof right here. I built that home, I paid it off, and I still live there. I'm not confused. I'm tired of being bullied. The room was silent except for the scribble of the reporter's pen. Ethan stared at the table. Madison's jaw tightened. The judge cleared her throat. This court finds no credible evidence to justify injunctive transfer of control. Petition denied. The property remains in Mr. Pierce's name. In addition, the court refers the fraudulent lien to the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office for criminal review. Her gavel cracked like thunder. A hush fell over the spectators, then a few murmured approvals. Caroline squeezed my shoulder. You did it, she whispered. But as we left the courtroom, I caught Madison's eyes. They weren't wet anymore. They were hard, calculating. On the courthouse steps, Caroline said quietly, they'll pivot again. This was their biggest swing yet, and they missed. Expect something uglier, outside the courthouse. That evening, back on my porch, I sipped coffee and watched the rain soak the yard. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of relief. House still mine, name still mine, but the relief was thin, because I knew Caroline was right. And whatever Ethan and Madison tried next wouldn't come on legal paper. It would come on a whisper, a knock, a smear so low it would try to take not just my house, but my identity as a father. The quiet after the hearing didn't feel like victory. It felt like the hush before a storm. For 3 days, Ethan and Madison were silent. No calls, no knocks, no envelopes. I tried to settle into routine again, but the silence itself gnawed at me. On Sunday morning, I put on my jacket and walked to church. The brick steps felt steeper than usual, maybe because of the stairs. A few old friends greeted me warmly, but others gave only tight nods. One woman whispered to another loud enough for me to hear. Poor man doesn't know what's happening. His son's just trying to protect him. Inside, Pastor Reynolds preached on forgiveness. His words rolled past me like rain on glass. All I could think of was Madison, smiling that saintly smile while she poisoned my name. After service, Rita intercepted me at the coffee table. Walt, don't go yet. Folks are talking. Let's nip it in the bud. Before I could answer, Madison herself appeared, heels clicking, smile practiced. Mr. Pierce, she said sweetly, loud enough for half the room. We've been so worried. Ethan just wants to make sure you're safe. That house is a lot to manage for one person. The room stilled. Every ear turned toward us. I set my cup down. Madison, my house is fine. My life is fine. What's not fine is you standing in God's house and lying. Gasps rippled. Madison's smile flickered, but she leaned closer. You can fight in court, Walter, but you can't fight perception. People will believe the son who's trying to help, not the father shouting on Facebook. Rita stepped between us. Enough. Everyone here knows Walt. He doesn't need saving, least of all from you. Madison's cheeks flushed. She pivoted, hugged a parishioner with theatrical grace, and slipped out with Ethan trailing. The damage lingered. Conversations hushed when I walked past. Some neighbors offered sympathy, but it carried a note of pity, not respect. That evening, Jim knocked on my door. "They're running a campaign, Walt. Not legal anymore, social. Heard Madison telling folks at the grocery you gave away money to strangers online." I barked a bitter laugh. Strangers? The only strangers in my life are the ones married into it. Jim's face was grim. "We need more than your word. People trust paper, signatures, stamps." I opened my folder on the table, spread out bank statements, receipts, notarized letters. "I've got more paper than a courthouse," he nodded. "Then let's use it. Let's put the truth where everyone can see it." The next day, Caroline helped draft a statement, formal, notarized, with her signature and the county seal of the fraud affidavit. I printed copies and tacked one on the library bulletin board, one at the diner, one at church. Simple words. Walter Pierce is of sound mind. His property is free of debt. Any claims otherwise are false and under investigation. Some folks thanked me for the clarity. Others smirked, muttered, overcompensating. Madison's whispers had already taken root. Wednesday night, as I sat on the porch, Rita came by, face tight. "Walt, I just heard something worse. They're saying you've been violent. Angry outbursts, threatening neighbors. That's what they're spreading now." My stomach dropped. "Violent? I haven't raised my hand to anyone in my life." She put a hand on my shoulder. "I know. But rumors don't need truth. They just need to be repeated." The beagle barked at something in the dark. I looked out at the quiet street, the windows glowing across the block. My neighbors, my community, being turned against me one story at a time. I clenched my jaw. They want to strip me of more than my house. They want to strip me of who I am. And in that moment, I knew Caroline was right. The next battle wouldn't be about deeds or mortgages. It would be about my dignity, my reputation, my very name. The storm finally broke on a Tuesday morning. I was halfway through sweeping the porch when 2 county deputies pulled up in a cruiser. My gut clenched. They weren't here for a friendly chat. "Mr. Pierce?" one asked, stepping out with a clipboard. "We're here to serve you with a temporary protective order." I blinked. "Protective order? Against who?" He read it flatly. "Filed by your son, Ethan Pierce, and his wife Madison. They allege harassment and threatening behavior. You're ordered to stay away from their residence and workplace pending hearing." My broom clattered against the rail. "Threatening? I haven't been near their house in weeks." The deputy's face softened just a hair. "Sir, I don't make judgments. I just serve papers. Court date's in 10 days. I signed the receipt with shaking hands." As the cruiser pulled away, Rita came hurrying across the street, clutching her apron. "Walt, I saw. What's going on?" I handed her the papers. She skimmed, her jaw tightening. "This is madness. They're flipping the script, painting you as the aggressor." "They want to corner me," I muttered. "First the foreclosure, now this. Next step, they'll try to prove I'm dangerous." That afternoon, Caroline cleared space on her desk for the new stack. "Don't panic," she said. "Temporary orders are easy to get. The hearing is what matters. We'll show the judge the truth, your clean record, neighbors testifying, the smear campaign." But the weight pressed down anyway. At the grocery, people pulled carts tighter when I passed. At church, Pastor Reynolds shook my hand but wouldn't meet my eyes. Madison had gotten to them first. Thursday night, Jim dropped by with pizza. We ate in silence a while, then he said, "They're trying to starve you out, socially, emotionally. Make you look like the crazy old man on Willow Avenue. You can't let them." I rubbed my temples. "Easier said than done, Jim. When folks believe a lie, it sticks harder than truth." He leaned forward. "Then give them something they can't ignore. Evidence, witnesses, papers stacked so high a judge can't see over it." I nodded slowly. My blue folder had grown thick as a phone book. Deeds, bank letters, notarized statements, screenshots of posts, even the APS report that cleared me. Proof layered on proof, but proof didn't stop the whispers. Friday afternoon, I was repairing a loose gutter when a stranger in a collared shirt walked up my drive. He carried a clipboard, and spoke with bureaucratic detachment. "Mr. Pierce, I'm with Montgomery County Adult Protective Services. We've received multiple reports of self-neglect and possible aggression. I need to assess your living conditions." My stomach twisted. "Again?" He shrugged. "Anonymous reports. Protocol requires we follow up. Per APS protocol, multiple anonymous reports trigger additional welfare checks." I let him in, showed him the tidy kitchen, stacked bills, organized meds. He scribbled notes, expression unreadable. "House is in order. You're oriented, articulate. Frankly, this looks retaliatory." He lowered his voice. "But sir, I'll warn you. If the complaints keep coming, they'll pile up until someone listens." When he left, I sat at the table staring at June's photo. For the first time, a thought whispered, what if they wear me down? What if they win by persistence, not proof? That night, sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the house felt like pressure closing in. At dawn, a knock rattled the door. Hard, insistent. I opened it to find a courier with a thick envelope stamped with the court's seal. Inside was a motion filed by Ethan's lawyer. They weren't just asking for protective orders now. They were asking the court, again, to appoint a guardian, claiming I was no longer capable of managing personal or financial affairs. The nightmare I feared had arrived. The doom spiral had begun. The guardianship motion hit me like a sucker punch. I'd spent weeks fighting lies, but this one cut deepest. The claim that I couldn't manage my own life, that I was, in effect, a child again. Caroline flipped through the petition in her office, lips pressed thin. This is their boldest move. Guardianship strips you of everything. Your right to spend, to sign, to own. If they succeed, Ethan will control not just the house, but every decision you make. I felt my chest tighten. That's what they've wanted all along. My house, my pension, my savings, my dignity. She looked me in the eye. We're not going to let it happen. But Walter, you need to prepare. Guardianship hearings are brutal. They'll parade witnesses claiming you're confused, unstable, dangerous. You'll need to stand steady, answer every question calmly, and let the documents do the heavy lifting. I nodded, though a tremor ran through me. The days crawled. Whispers grew louder. At the diner, a man I'd known 20 years muttered just loud enough, "Poor Walt. Doesn't even know what day it is." At church, one woman patted my arm and said, "Don't worry, Ethan will take good care of you." Each word was a nail hammered into my reputation. Jim and Rita rallied around me. Rita brought casseroles, fussing like a sister. Jim showed up with a stack of affidavits from old co-workers, men who'd climbed poles beside me, swearing I'd always been sharp, reliable, precise. "These folks owe you, Walt," he said. "Time they paid it back." But inside, doubt gnawed. What if the judge believed Ethan? What if a stranger decided I was finished? The night before the hearing, I sat on the porch with my blue folder open on my lap, every page in order. Deed, fraud affidavit, medical certifications, APS reports, neighbor statements, proof of a lifetime, proof of me. Morning came heavy, sky low and gray. The courthouse loomed like a fortress. Caroline walked beside me, crisp and composed, while my knees felt like lead. Inside, the room buzzed with spectators, neighbors, churchgoers, even a few reporters. Ethan sat at the petitioner's table, polished and solemn. Madison wore black, as if attending my funeral. The judge opened. "This court convenes to consider renewed petition for guardianship of Walter Pierce." Ethan's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, Mr. Pierce is 76 years old, increasingly confused, financially reckless, and prone to angry outbursts. His son only seeks to protect him." They called their first witness, a woman I barely knew, claiming she'd seen me wandering outside the grocery, not knowing where he was. Then a man I'd never met, insisting I'd shouted threats at kids near my fence. Madison herself testified with trembling hands, describing me as erratic, paranoid, unsafe to be alone. Each lie landed like a stone in my chest. I wanted to shout, to call them liars to their faces, but Caroline's hand on my arm steadied me. Then it was our turn. Rita stepped up, apron still dusted with flour. I clean Walter's house every week. He's more organized than I am, pays bills on time, keeps everything in order. The only thing wrong here is folks trying to take what's his. Jim followed, voice steady. Walt balanced the firehouse accounts better than any accountant. He's sharp, disciplined, and he's being railroaded by his own kin. Caroline introduced the APS report that cleared me, the notarized affidavit from my doctor, the fraud investigation letter from the county recorder. Each document landed like a shield between me and their lies. Finally, the judge turned to me. "Mr. Pierce, do you understand these proceedings?" I rose, folder in hand, knees trembling but voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand perfectly. My son wants my house and my savings, so he's painting me as incompetent. But I paid for that house, brick by brick. I balanced every account, paid every bill, kept every receipt. I'm not confused. I'm angry because my own blood is trying to strip me of my dignity." Silence filled the courtroom. Ethan shifted, unable to meet my eyes. Madison's jaw clenched. The judge leaned back, steepling her fingers. "I've heard enough for today. This court will review all documentation and testimony before issuing a ruling." Her gavel cracked once. As people shuffled out, whispers rippled, some sympathetic, others doubtful. Caroline squeezed my shoulder. "You held your ground. Whatever comes, you stood tall." I nodded, though my heart pounded, because I knew the truth. The fight wasn't over, and the verdict, when it came, would decide whether I walked out free or a prisoner in my own life. The verdict came a week later, in a courtroom packed tighter than Sunday service. Word had spread across Montgomery County. Would the old man lose everything? I sat at the respondent's table, folder in my lap like armor. Caroline whispered, "Stay calm, no matter what she says. Truth's on our side." The judge entered, papers in hand. The room stilled. "This court has reviewed all evidence and testimony in the matter of guardianship for Mr. Walter Pierce." Her voice was steady, but I caught a flicker of disapproval in her eyes as she glanced at Ethan's side of the room. The petitioners provided allegations of confusion, financial recklessness, and aggression. However, their claims were unsupported, and in several cases, contradicted by credible evidence. She lifted one page. The Adult Protective Services report found Mr. Pierce competent. A medical affidavit confirmed no cognitive impairment. Financial records showed consistent, accurate management, and the deed fraud allegations are currently under review by the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office. The judge lowered the papers. Therefore, the petition for guardianship is denied. Furthermore, the court refers this matter for possible charges of fraud, perjury, and elder financial exploitation. The gavel cracked once. The courtroom buzzed. I exhaled hard, knees trembling. Caroline leaned close. "That's it. You're free." But the real moment came not from the judge, but from the crowd. A murmur swelled as neighbors whispered. Someone clapped softly, then stopped. Rita stood and said, loud enough for all, "Told you he's sharp as ever." The words sliced the fog. People nodded, eyes shifting from Ethan and Madison to me. Ethan's face burned crimson. Madison's mask cracked. Her lips pressed so tight they nearly disappeared. She leaned toward Ethan, hissed something, and they both rose. But before they could leave, I spoke up. "Judge, may I say one thing?" She hesitated, then nodded. I stood, folder in hand. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "Neighbors, church friends, anyone here who's heard the whispers, look at the proof. Look at what the court just ruled. My son and his wife tried to strip me of my home, my savings, my dignity. Not with fists, but with papers and lies." I held up the folder, plastic sleeves catching the light. This is how you fight. With receipts, with truth. And you keep your head high, even when your own family tries to drag you low." Silence hung heavy. Then Caroline gathered our things and we walked out. On the courthouse steps, reporters crowded, mics thrust forward. "Mr. Pierce, how do you feel? What happens next?" I looked straight into the cameras. "I feel like a man who just got his name back. And what happens next? I'm not the one on trial anymore." That evening, I sat on my porch with a hot mug of coffee, June's picture watched from the mantel. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace, but it didn't last long. Because as twilight settled, headlights swept across my yard. Ethan's truck idled at the curb. Madison leaned across, window down, her voice sharp enough to carry. "This isn't over, old man. You embarrassed us. You'll regret it." The truck peeled off, taillights glowing red into the night. My hand tightened on the mug. I wasn't afraid, not anymore. But I knew one thing for certain. Their next move would be desperate, and it would strike harder than anything before. The night after Ethan's truck idled at my curb, I barely slept. His parting words, "You'll regret it," echoed like a splinter in my chest. I'd faced lawsuits, forged liens, even social workers knocking on my door. But this felt different. Desperation has a smell, and I could sense it on them. 3 days passed quietly, too quietly. Then, on Friday morning, a courier arrived with one last envelope, thick, official, bearing the seal of the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office. My hands trembled as I opened it. But this time it wasn't aimed at me. It was a criminal summons for Ethan Pierce and Madison Pierce, charged with attempted deed fraud, perjury, and elder financial exploitation. I read the names again and again, hardly believing. For months, they had dragged me through mud. Now the law was staring back at them. Caroline confirmed it over the phone. The prosecutors moving fast. The forged lien, the false testimony, the harassment. It's all tied together. They'll face real consequences now. Prison time's on the table. I sat at the kitchen table, sunlight spilling across my blue folder, the same folder they had tried to drown me with. I almost laughed. It had turned into the very rope that caught them. Words spread like wildfire. At the diner, folks who'd whispered about me now nodded with sheepish respect. At church, Pastor Reynolds clasped my hand and said, "Walter, I owe you an apology. I should have trusted you sooner." Rita hugged me so tight I nearly spilled my coffee. "Justice, Walt. Finally, justice." Jim grinned over a checkerboard on my porch. "Told you, paper beats rumor every time." But the sweetest moment came at the courthouse steps a week later. Reporters crowded, cameras flashing, as Ethan and Madison were led out by deputies in cuffs. Madison tried to hide her face. Ethan stared at the ground. I stood across the street, not gloating, just steady. A neighbor murmured beside me, "Guess the old man wasn't so crazy after all." That night, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and sat on the porch. The air was cool, cicadas buzzing in the trees. I looked at June's photo through the window. "They tried, honey," I whispered. "Lord knows they tried." But I didn't bend. I didn't break. For the first time in months, I felt the tightness in my chest ease. My home was safe. My name was clean. My dignity intact. And as the stars blinked above Willow Avenue, I made myself a promise. Whatever years I had left, I'd spend them living for me, not for anyone else's approval, not for a son who turned against me, not for whispers on the street. I had stood tall, I had fought back, and I had won. And that, for a man my age, was worth more than any inheritance.